It's session 5 of the Abomination Vaults, and while there's still a fair bit of content on the first floor, I've made the decision to begin Chapter 2. My choice here was driven by a couple of things. Firstly, my players have been level 2 for the whole adventure so far, but haven't been earning experience, and I want them to look forward to leveling up. Beginning Chapter 2 means that I can start rewarding experience again. In addition to this, already being level 2 means they are already capable of dealing with the Chapter 2 encounters, so merging them into the current content isn't as much of an issue in regards to balance. Secondly, my players have repeatedly referenced gathering enough information to tell the Atari garrison and allowing them to deal with the rest. I wanted to quickly establish that it'll be our heroes that are expected to deal with the Gauntlet, and since that conversation relies on the Dead Tide for Atari being completed, I wanted to get into that content as soon as I was able to. My final reason was that my players have discovered enough information to reasonably move on to Chapter 2. They know that the Gauntlet is deeper than just the lighthouse, they know that there's dark presence beneath that is gathering power, and after having dealt with the Dead Tide, they know the imminent threat of leaving the Gauntlet undisturbed. With all this in mind, this session consisted of the transition between Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Picking things up where we left off last time, our heroes are currently in a losing battle against the corpse lights of Nimbeloth's shrine. The heroes have begun to flee the encounter, but Ornifex is grabbed and alone with 2 of the undead monsters. Between sessions, my players kept coming to me with various ideas for how to get out of this situation alive. Tina, Ornifex's player, has expressed a clear desire to keep this character alive, making it clear she is not excited about the idea of having a backup character. It's her first time playing a tabletop RPG campaign, and despite the reputation I've picked up as a pretty deadly DM, I do try to keep my players' wishes in mind when it comes to these kinds of things, especially if they're new to the hobby. Having said that, the Abomination Vaults is notorious in the community for being a deadly adventure path, and I don't want to diminish that reputation or nerf the encounters where I don't need to. So, what I've settled on is giving each character 1 second chance. My players aren't aware of this, as I want them to behave as though death is always a real threat, because it is, but I've combed each character's backstory for an in-game reason that they would be given a chance to cheat death just once. Hopefully, our heroes never actually need to use this second chance, but we'll just have to wait and see. Jumping back into the battle, check the previous campaign diary to see how we ended up here. Milo was next to act and lay prone on the ground after just having been healed from unconsciousness. Sesto had already fled the room, and May and Rock were close enough to the door that leaving was a non-issue. The drama of this battle is in Ornifex's escape. One by one, our heroes fled the room. May first, followed by Milo. The group hoped that Ornifex would be able to free herself. If she managed it, there'd be nothing to prevent her walking out of the room. Her initial plan, one she brought to me between sessions, was to use a ladder feather token. She wanted to position the token between the grabbing corpse light and herself before activating it, sending the corpse light in one direction and her in another. I liked this plan. I was happy for it to work, with caveats. Firstly, since she's grabbed, she'll need to succeed that flat 5 DC check to get an item out of her bag, since that has the manipulate trait. Secondly, based on the direction that she'd be sent, she was going to impact a wall at high force. I ruled that the impact of being thrust into the wall by an instantaneous push would be equal to falling damage, so she would take 5 damage. When I explained this before the session, she was happy with this ruling. However, plans never quite survive contact with the enemy. Before her turn, one of the corpse lights bit her with a critical hit, reducing her below 5 hit points. Suddenly, her plan became much more dangerous. She could still go forward with her plan, but since everybody except for Rock had already left, she'd be relying on him to get her unconscious body out. So what she was left with was the good old escape action. 3 actions, 1 hero point, only 1 success needed. Attempt 1.
Yeah, let's try that because I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Oh.
Failure. Hero point.
Let's go.
Oh, the same roll. Failure. Attempt 2.
To leave this place. Oh my god.
Oh my god. Come on.
Failure. Attempt 3.
Yes.
I feel
Okay, yeah, I'm
like
gonna
this
die.
is gonna go to hell.
Failure. That hope that the party had drained. Then it came to Rock's turn, and he had a choice to make. Save Ornifex or run. As his allies disappeared around him, he ran towards the corpse light, grabbing Ornifex, fainted, and critically hit it. This was not enough though. Since our heroes had begun fleeing after only the first round, they had done very little damage, and this crit did little to help in freeing Ornifex. The only small advantage it did grant was giving the enemies a second target. Yay. It did do a little good, as in the following seconds, the corpse-like grappling Ornifex chewed into her throat and released her unconscious body onto the ground. It then lunged for Rock, biting and successfully grappling him. The rest of the party, understandably, began panicking, unsure whether to return and help or to accept the loss of seemingly 2 of their allies. I could tell my players were getting flustered, as their turns began taking longer and they seemed genuinely unsure of how to proceed. They ended up committing to the retreat, and it seemed like they were ready to say goodbye to 2 of our heroes in only the 5th session, second chances not included. Rock began his turn alone, grappled, and the only chance the unconscious Ornifex had left. He essentially had 3 actions in which to save his and Ornifex's life. He could either kill all 3 corpse lights, or he could escape. He began with the escape action. It is a critical success.
Yay!
Oh, nice.
Critical success. He tore free of the undead's hands and stepped between the enemies towards Ornifex. I should interject here by saying we don't know the rules for dragging unconscious allies. What's about to happen could have been totally illegal. With 2 actions left, he wanted to drag Ornifex out of the room. I ruled that dragging an ally requires half movement. This left him with the exact amount of movement he needed to get himself and her out of the room. If he hadn't critically succeeded on his escape check, this wouldn't have been possible. By what seems like a pure miracle, everybody got out, and the combat ended. Relief washed over the heroes.
So you wanted adventure, Milo? This is adventure.
This. Whoa. Whew. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this.
Oh,
Hey, you guys,
took a
like,
decent chunk out of me.
are you coming? Or oh my god, what happened? Oh my god, I'm struggling. You can move.
They were like totally dying, but I don't know. Rock got out of there somehow. It didn't look good. I
Called
thought for sure they were
experience.
dead.
The group fed Ornifex a healing potion, allowing her to recover and awaken. She was understandably disorientated, having just been in a very dire situation when she fell.
I'm completely confused what's happened. You know, when you just wake up from either an operation or a too long sleep and you just don't know where you are, who you are, what's happening.
What you are, you're a bird.
Yeah. I just ruffle a little bit with my feathers, make a few call sounds. Till I notice that I'm in company that doesn't understand Tengu. What happened? Where are we?
We're where we were before, but can we answer questions in a minute? We should probably go.
Not wanting to stay here for a moment longer than they had to, the party beelined for the exit of the Gauntlight ruins. They had collapsed the bridge upon entry, so they used the ladder feather token to create a makeshift bridge. Wasting no time on recovery, the heroes limped along the path towards Atari as midnight quickly approached. Quick note here, this upcoming encounter involves parental abuse, so if that's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, then you can skip to this time code. As the group hurried home along the swamp path, they see a grizzled, elderly human marching towards them. He was well armed and armored in the Atari garrison uniform. Upon getting a better look, they identify the man as Gregory Suresh, Milo's father. As you approach each other, you would recognize this figure as Gregory Suresh, the drill sergeant of the
no.
garrison and Milo's father. Without a
This
word,
is not good.
he marches up to Milo, and for the first time in your life, Milo, your father strikes you.
Oh, no.
Everything goes white, and your eyes instinctually start watering from the stinging pain. There are times when you're doing your GM prep where you have a great idea for a scene and end up writing this epic or dramatic encounter, only to realize that you aren't sure that you can actually pull it off. This was definitely one of these encounters for me. I'm pretty sure I lack the acting prowess to pull off an angry, abusive father vibe. I consider myself a very relaxed person and very rarely get actually angry. It's been well over 15 years since I've needed to raise my voice at anyone. All this is to say, I was very nervous when trying to roleplay as this NPC, and ended up toning it down a bit from what I originally wrote. In my planning, I wanted this to be a scene of genuine disdain towards Milo from his father. Gregory was supposed to be enraged more so at Milo's ambition and ignorance of his rules than from actual care for his son's well-being. I ended up toning it down as the conversation continued, though, as I began to feel unable to perform that intent well enough. Is this something you guys have experienced? Feeling personally unable to roleplay the encounter you've planned? Either way, as the encounter played out, things shifted towards a toxic protectiveness of Milo, rather than his initial annoyance at his rebellious kid. Look at you, you're covered in blood, your armor and clothes look ruined. What the fuck were you thinking?
We had a mission to deal with, alright? I was trying to do my part.
What do you mean, do your... Milo, you helped a fishery.
Yeah. And like you said, you've been training me. And I've actually been training on my own. And I've been learning things. And I thought I was ready. And to be fair, we did survive. And I'll look to my companions with a pleading look of assistance.
He looks you like up and down. It looks like you barely survived. Surviving shouldn't be the success. Surviving is the baseline. At this point, the rest of the group tried to step in and de-escalate the situation. This just made Gregory turn on them, reprimanding them for bringing Milo with them.
I want to put like a hand out, like stand between. Well, can we just take a breath here? I'll have you know that without him, we would not have made it out alive. He definitely did his part. But as you said, he is covered in blood. It is currently the middle of the night. Do you not think we can do this another time?
Yes, actually, that's a good point.
He like glares at you.
I want to like meet his gaze. Gonna keep a hand out, put a hand on Milo's shoulder. If you care as much as you say you do about your son, to come out here and start yelling at him about him not being safe, I think you can spare even just a minute for him to get back to town and actually have some healthcare.
It's all very well and good. You try and take care of him now. You took an untrained child into the gauntlet and risked his life. You are irresponsible companions to that kid. Gregory keeps referring to Milo as child or kid. It is worth pointing out that Milo is 21 years old and legally an adult. I plan on using this fact as a reason for Milo to keep adventuring with the group, despite his father's orders to never see them again or visit the gauntlet again.
I refuse to have this conversation in the middle of the swamp at midnight when
Luckily
everyone
for
is
you,
hurt.
you're not the one I'm talking to. He grabs Milo's shoulder and starts pushing him back towards town. I'm taking you back. You are not setting foot in that ruin again. Do you understand me?
I want to resist his grab.
Okay. I guess that would make it a grapple from Sureshi.
Yeah.
That's against your fortitude,
No.
you see?
Yeah, that's a success.
Okay, yeah, he ragdolls you towards town. If you try and fight it, he just shoves you in the back and, like, catches you to stop you from tripping, but is basically just dragging you. As he's, like, walking away, he turns back to the group. Half turns back. He doesn't, like, face you, but he just turns his head to the side. I don't want you anywhere near my boy. I had a choice to make now. In my planning of this scene, I created a caveat that if the group discovers enough information about the gauntlet, the conversation would be interrupted by the gauntlet activating and beginning Dead Tide of Atari. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I felt that I was ready to begin Chapter 2, and felt that the prerequisites had been met. However, our heroes were so hurt. They hadn't yet healed from the corpse-like battle, they were practically empty on in-battle healing and spells, and morale had taken a hit. There was a strong argument for allowing them to return home for some rest and launching Chapter 2 another time. Unfortunately for my players, this was just too good of an opportunity to pass up on. The drama of having an eyewitness to accuse the party of causing the incident, the beaten-up heroes being forced to push beyond their limits to save the town, the expended spells and healing making the upcoming fight feel like an uphill battle. My nasty GM heart couldn't resist. Yeah, he's maybe 30 seconds away. Before you hear this, like, quaking from the gauntlet, and you turn back and see the entire lighthouse shuddering. And this light suddenly blazes in a sickly pale blue illumination. A beam arcs south, falling not directly onto Atari, but onto the sprawling graveyard located at Atari's western edge. Gregory lets go of Milo in shock and just full of fury looks back at the group. What the fuck did you do? And then he turns and starts sprinting for town.
We tried to stop it!
Our heroes hesitated, unsure whether to head to the graveyard to help, or to first take a detour to see Rin and get more information about what could be happening. Rin, being well read on the occult tales of this land, would have been able to provide some valuable information about what they might expect, as well as offer them some emergency healing items. This trip would obviously have taken time, though, and without knowing what is happening within the Gauntlet's beam, it would have been a big risk. Instead, they decided to head directly to the graveyard to assess the damage before making their choice on what to do next. I made sure to let my players know that they do have a bit of time. I wanted there to be urgency, but I also wanted my players to feel like they could heal up before dealing with this emergency. I'm mean enough to trigger the dead tide while they're all beaten up, but I wouldn't want to actively send them to a DPK. This adventure is dangerous enough without manufacturing even more deadly situations. They arrived at the graveyard to see dozens of undead leaping from the cliffs onto the roof of the Dawnflower Library. Several risen dead remained in the graveyard and showed no signs of following their undead friends off the edge. As such, they need to be dealt with. Along with our heroes, 3 members of the Atari garrison and Gregory were also stood by the gates to the graveyard. They seemed utterly terrified, and even Gregory seemed spooked and unwilling to face the undead. With the zombies and skeletons seemingly wandering without purpose, our heroes began to rapidly treat their wounds in preparation, ready to drop everything and run in if things escalate. I made a note in my head to give them 30 minutes of prep time. During this time, Hornifex healed some of her more heavily damaged allies, while Milo looked upon the undead to determine what kind of living dead they were, specifically making sure they weren't more corpse lights. Rock approached Gregory and offered his assistance. In the moment, I decided, based on the kind of person Gregory is, he'd likely have a begrudging respect for an older man and law enforcer. He still wasn't impressed with his involvement in the Gauntlet exploration, but he could look past that for now. He accepted Rock's help and told him that they needed someone to deal with the remaining undead. We need someone to go in there and deal with these. The lads aren't happy about it. I don't want you taking my boy in there, but I'm willing to open the gate and let you in.
Look, your boy will be fine as long as he's with me. I won't let anything happen to him. He's a hell of a kid.
Gregory demanded that they leave Milo outside the gates, but Rock swayed his mind, and Gregory agreed to let him in as long as he stays nearby.
Alright. We're going in to deal with the bullshit. You, pointing at Milo.
Hmm?
Your old man's going in too. You gotta stay within 30 feet of him. Understood?
No, he can't do that. He needs to go, lead the guard guys.
The guards will be fine. He's doing the father thing. Trying to be a father for once, I guess.
That's inconvenient timing.
Rock reported this agreement to the heroes. Milo was a little annoyed by these terms, but begrudgingly agreed. They began to plan their attack on the undead. Milo analysed the attacking potential of the undead and determined that they will likely just attack with tooth and claw, lacking anything particularly nasty. Rock scanned the battlefield and took note of each creature's speed and how spread out they were. He decided that, due to the distance of each enemy, they could feasibly sneak into the graveyard and kill each undead before the next could reach them. As the team lacks strong ranged options, they requested a guard come with them as a backline to shoot the undead with their crossbows. As per the book's suggestion, I gave them Frightened 3, which worked pretty well. This battlefield layout is a suggestion from the book. It states, the undead are scattered throughout the graveyard, with no undead within 30 feet of any other, although they quickly move towards any fight or distraction. Stealth and ranged tactics could well thin the opposition before they close in. With the undead being scattered, the heroes won't need to deal with a large number all at once if they are quick and efficient. After playing out this encounter, I'm not sure I'd follow this advice next time. As I have 5 players, I increased the number of enemies slightly, but I think even if I hadn't done this, this fight is very long in this format. Due to the lack of surprise rounds in Pathfinder, we spent 3 rounds in combat initiative as people just stealthed towards the undead, and the undead wandered 5 or 10 feet during their turns. Once the fight broke out, most of the undead spent the majority of their turns striding. This resulted in a very long and very easy encounter, with hardly any of the enemies even getting to roll attacks, never mind dealing any damage. The fight ended up taking over an hour of our 3-hour session. My revised plan would start with all the undead slightly more grouped towards the centre of the graveyard. Half the undead would be freely walking around, but half would still be digging free. At the start of each round, I would choose a few undead to dig free and be able to join the battle. With the nature of digging free, I'd give the partially submerged undead the prone and grappled conditions until they get loose. What all this means is instead of waiting for the undead to travel across the entire length of the map, the players would be able to choose between dealing with the loose undead or preemptively slaying the trapped undead. The battle might end up being just as easy, but at least it'll be handled quicker and give the players targets instead of them all sharing one easy-to-kill enemy. During the battle, Gregory made sure to stay near Milo. I gave him the Frightened 1 condition, as his desire to protect Milo battled his fear of the undead. He killed a few undead that got within range of Milo, keeping him safe from harm. Once the final undead was destroyed, the heroes listened out for what was happening below the cliff. They could tell that people were frightened and panicking, but they couldn't hear the sounds of battle. Before they had time to assess the situation fully, Belcora activated her trump card and sent down the Scalathrax. Gregory and the guard bolted for the gate. They could resolve themselves to face undead, but this unknown aberration truly terrified them. I sent them running partially for story reasons, but also because I felt the undead encounter had been too easy and unengaging, so I wanted to make our heroes face this creature alone. In contrast to the undead battle, this combat encounter was much better. Shorter, more efficient, and scarier. The clear step up in danger prompted Ornifex to finally begin using some actual spell slots. Throughout the battle, she threw Runic Body on May and a Runic Weapon on Milo. My 5e brain struggled with having 2 concentration spells active, but after some quick research, it looks like it is allowed. You don't even need to make concentration checks. Wild. After seeing just how big the damage spikes was from these, I became slightly concerned that this fight would end before the Scalathrax could flex a bit, but that proved not to be an issue. The creature's AC was high enough that it brushed off a lot of the incoming attacks. It blasted May, Milo, and Ornifex with its toxic oil, damaging a good portion of the party. May dealt some serious damage in return, though, thanks to her magical buffs. She tried to trip the creature, but a critical fail put her in the dirt herself. This allowed the creature to crit her, dealing a huge 28 damage. She also became infected by the Scalathrax venom. Sadly, the fight ended before this venom could take hold. We'll still go through the motions, though, so that they know what to be scared of next time they face one of these creatures. In the final moments before it was surrounded and killed, it managed to fell Milo in a final swing. This was enough to make Gregory turn around and run back towards the encounter. He grabbed Milo and pulled him clear of the final thrashing motions of the battle. And this is where we ended the session. Milo is unconscious and May is badly wounded. Gregory has now seen his son fail to withstand battle firsthand. You can be sure that he is going to double down on his demands that Milo does not go adventuring with the group further. I want to use this as an opportunity to create some distance between Milo and his family. In the next session, Gregory is going to make an ultimatum that either Milo promises never to go adventuring again, or he'll be kicked out of the house. Despite his moments of protection over Milo, I don't want the group to forget that he is an abusive father and not a good person. Hopefully this ultimatum will result in Milo living with another party member, and we can begin escalating the deterioration of his relationship with his family. It might seem like I'm being unnecessarily cruel with this roleplay, and I can certainly see a world in which a player might be upset out of game by these developments. However, it's all about knowing your players. Max, Milo's player, is emotionally mature enough to navigate these kind of relationships. There are players that I certainly wouldn't go this far with, but I'm confident that he'll get enjoyment out of the roleplay of this kind of drama. After all, he wrote a backstory solely about the poor relationship with his dad. I'm sure he would be disappointed if I didn't utilize it. I think next session will be a roleplay heavy one. They've mentioned returning to Rin to discuss what they found. I think it's time to introduce our first fortune telling. I've got something fun planned, but more on that next time. I plan on having Mayor Osif summon the party to discuss their involvement in the event. Gregory, in his spite, will tell the mayor that they caused the event. hoping that it will result in Milo being forced to stay away. In reality, the conversation will end with our heroes being tasked with locating the cause of the event and stopping it. It should be a fun session that can act as a welcome break from the constant threat of death. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like, subscribe if you want more. All your support is very welcome for a small channel like mine, so I really appreciate it. Have a great day, and farewell.